Host enable my camera, please.
You are
Okay.
now
Hello, I
able.
recognize that voice. Hi, how are you? The last time we did this,
I know it's getting very comfortable. You
yeah.
mean Mitts and Zoom?
Well, I was just asking Richard. I said, okay, when I did the mayoral debate, he
It's
wanted me to call them Barbara and Todd, so I'm going to use first names today as well, after the
Great.
introductions, of
Well,
course.
I think as I shared with you that time, the titles change, the name never does. So
That's true.
always call me Todd. And
All
Richard,
right.
it's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Todd. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. You doing okay?
Yeah, we are.
I was wondering if Lamont able to get his link.
Let me text him.
So, everyone, we want to welcome you as we kind of get our technology ducks in a row here. We're waiting for Dr. Lamont Jackson to join. Just want to welcome you. I'm Marcella Lee from CBS 8 News. We're also streaming on our website, cbs8.com. For those of you who joined and signed up for the actual webinar, you've got a Zoom link so that you'll be able to engage in our questions in the chat. We only have an hour, so what we did is everyone who registered was able to submit a question that we want our district leaders, the San Diego Unified School District leaders, to know what important questions there are in the community. So our panelists that you see here are representatives from the community. That way we can kind of keep this in an orderly fashion and ask the questions that need to be heard. So each panelist is a representative of the community. They have their own students, kids, grandkids in the district, and have a vested interest in making this as smooth of a transition as possible as we try to support the kids and get them back safely into schools. So do we want to wait for Dr. Jackson just a couple more minutes? I can read a little bit more about how this will play out
He's on,
tonight.
I think.
Oh, here he comes. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
I'm here. It's saying I can't start my video.
There we
Oh.
go. I think, do we?
We've all had that issue, Lamar.
Okay,
You
thank
are
you.
able to do that now.
Okay.
Oh, there we
There-
go. Hello.
Now we are all here.
Yes.
All right.
Great.
All right. Mitz, would you like to begin and welcome everybody officially?
Yes, of course. My name is Mitz Lee, President of the Alliance for Quality Education, and thank you all for attending our Parents Connect with San Diego Unified School District leadership. The purpose of tonight's forum is to bring parents' voices to our district leaders so they can hear their concerns and struggles in helping their children to be properly educated during these long school closures. COVID-19 has forever changed the direction of education while creating additional responsibilities for parents to help their children. We are hoping we can explore ways to work together to put our children front and center in the decision-making process and how to provide support to their parents in helping to educate their kids. But before we introduce our moderator, Marcella Lee, let me introduce our San Diego Mayor, Todd Gloria. Mayor Gloria, thank you for coming tonight. We are honored by your presence to give a warm welcome to our education community. Thank you for coming.
Mitts, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for including me. I want to thank Mitts Lee, who is an incredible leader in our community in a variety of settings, the educational setting, but also in our API community. Mitts and Marcella know I'm proud to be the city's first person of color elected mayor. I'm a quarter Filipino, so I'm proud to be holding it down with some Pinoy pride for our community. But I know as a member of the community, I understand how important public education is. And why I wanted to be here today at Mitts's invitation is to express and renew the partnership the city has with our school districts, recognizing that my job as mayor is to build a great city. And I think we recognize and know you can't build a great city without great schools. And obviously right now, the times are really challenging. And so I wanted to express my appreciation and support for Richard Barrera, my close friend, as well as to Lamont Jackson, who had a fantastic write-up in the paper today. And you may be interim, Lamont, but I think you may know that I know a thing or two about doing jobs on a temporary basis. These are still opportunities to drive change. And I hope and I know that that's what you'll do given your track record in the past. Again, my point to be here today is to recognize the partnership, and probably the best partnership I can point to in terms of its productiveness is our downtown central library. think many of you know and probably have come to rely on our public libraries now more than ever. That library would not stand there if it wasn't for the support of Richard Barrera of our school district and the co-investment of funds of our school district and our city to create that public monument, really, to civic pride and education. That can't be a once in generation thing. That has to be an ongoing thing. And so you've seen me try and show more of that. Just last week, calling upon the state to prioritize educators when it comes to vaccinations. We all want our schools to reopen. We all want them to reopen safely. In order to do that, it seems to me we have to prioritize our teachers to get vaccinated so they can do that safely. So you'll continue to see me advocate for that, using all the relationships and the power and authority of my office and of our city to make sure that we are partners with our school district. The school district was there when we were trying to establish our new central library. We need to be there for our school district, and I'm appreciative to all the representatives who are part of today's conversation and to all of you who've tuned in. Our kids need us. They need their mayor as well, and that's why I wanted to be here today. So Mitz, again, thank you for including me. Richard, Lamont, thank you for including me as well. Marcella, thanks you for help moderating this important conversation.
Yeah, a lot of people really concerned about our kids. I know all of you who are here are also concerned, and we appreciate this opportunity. I was talking to Richard earlier. I feel like we're kind of on the threshold here of really being able to get the kids back into the classroom. And so, you know, instead of having an awkward conversation and demands here and there, this is an amazing opportunity to collaborate together and work together for a solution. So I appreciate everyone being here and for joining in on the live stream. A little bit about the Parents or Alliance for Quality Education. Mitz, you are the founder 25 years ago, and you have a great history of collaborating and working with leaders, and I know after this you want to meet with the teachers and the principals because everyone has a say. So this is a great starting point. We don't have much time, less than an hour left now, so what we've done is everyone who was able to register through the webinar was able to submit a question that you want heard. And what our panelists did, it was a lot of work because it was a couple hundred questions, went through all of the questions. Many of them were duplicates, and so we kind of congregated them. We've kind of collapsed them into certain categories so that we can get through all of them in this short 1 hour time frame. And so each of the panelists here I'm going to introduce, and then they will be asking the questions on behalf of the San Diego Unified School District community. So first up is Lily Higman. She's the former cluster chair for Mission Bay's school cluster. It's in the Mission Bay High School area. And she currently has 3 students who are in the San Diego Unified School District in grades 7, 9, and 11. So she's a concerned parent, obviously active in the district. Lily, what would you like to ask Mr. Barrera and Dr. Jackson?
Good evening. Thank you, Marcella, and thank you everyone for being here. Obviously, on top of mind for everybody is when are we going to reopen? So I actually, we always believe in providing some solutions and not only come with complaints. So before I ask my question, I would like to ask a couple things. To keep the parents more informed, is there any way that we can put an agenda at every board meeting talking about any progress we have towards opening of schools? And similarly, I know the board meetings every 2 weeks and the parents would like to keep updated more frequently than that. If we could have some sort of a dashboard, I know I sent a link to all the board members about what San Francisco Unified is doing. And we would like to know for every school how many kids are in school full-time, in school part-time, etc. So an agenda item at every board meeting and some way of keeping us informed easily on our website, up to date. So the question is, this is quite broad, but what are your plans for reopening? I know that we should be in phase 2 and we're not quite there yet. And what is the progress on that? And obviously you don't have to go through the whole history, but where are we right now? And what can we look forward to in the next couple weeks, maybe to a month?
So Lily, I'll jump in and thank you. And by the way, thank you, Marcella, and thank you, Mitz and Alliance for Quality Education for hosting us tonight. So there's a lot to your question, Lily. First of all, we have heard in public comment over the past few board meetings that people would appreciate a regular board item on our agenda, and we will make that happen, and that will begin with our board meeting next week on February 23rd. And we think it's especially important to do that now because, as we'll talk about a lot tonight, we are starting to move, and there's a lot of positive things happening now. So I do think that there's a lot to keep people updated on. And because I think we will start to see more students on our campuses, even over the next few weeks and then moving forward, I think it's also appropriate to add, to the dashboard that we currently have on our website, a progress report like you're suggesting on, our different schools and who's on campus and how are we continuing to make progress. What I'd say, Lily, again is, this is nearly a year, right? It was March 13th that we closed down. And, this has been by far the most difficult year that I've certainly experienced, since I've been on the board since 2008. I can't imagine that there's been a more challenging year for students, for parents, for educators than we've had over this year. But there is light on the horizon now. And a few very important things are starting to happen. So maybe the most important thing that we're seeing is our case rates are really coming down very consistently and actually very dramatically when you think of where we're. I think our average new daily cases per 100,000 on today's dashboard of the county was 22. That number was 70 a month ago. And so, it was 34 a week ago. So, we're seeing the rapid decline of case rates, and that is really opening the door to a lot of possibility. What it means for us right now in phase one is that we are moving forward, and Lamont can talk about, how this is happening on our campuses, but we have 22,000 students who are eligible for what we call phase one. And phase one is really about our students that we identify as most in need of coming onto campus and receiving in-person learning. And so that includes students with disabilities whose IEPs require them to be able to receive services on campus. It includes homeless students, it includes students in foster care, English learners, and students whose teachers just identify as really needing to come onto campus. So we have about 22,000 students that have already been identified in that group. And currently we have a little over 2,000 students, and that's been consistent, who've been coming on since we began phase one in October. But now, again, as we're seeing these declining case rates, we're moving forward with an ability to open up what we call learning labs on our campuses. So these are staffed spaces of small groups of students who can come onto campus, do their online work on campus, with adult supervision, but who also then have probably better and more efficient access to, if we need counseling support, if we need specialist support, with the students already there on campus and students who can be there on campus all day. We're going to see what we're hoping a significant expansion of the number of students that are coming in onto our campuses over the next few weeks in our learning labs. And our teaching labs, so these are the classroom teachers who would invite their students onto campus. We think we're going to see more teachers coming in, over the next few weeks as the case rates continue to come down. And we're hopeful that more parents will say yes, to the invitation to come onto our campuses. So between now and let's say, early March, Lily, I think we're going to see a pretty significant expansion of students in phase one coming onto our campuses. Then in terms of our ability to get to phase two, again, some very positive things are happening. We are seeing the case rates, again, if they continue at this rate, we will, I believe, be in the red very soon, be out of the purple zone. we're already in that place where under the state Department of Public Health guidelines, if the rates stay at where they're at now, that would allow elementary school students to start to come back. And then if we get into the red, that allows middle and high school students to start to come back. So as we see these trends continue at their current rates, I think we can be optimistic that the case rates will allow us to move into phase 2. And then as Mayor Gloria began, we are very blessed because our partnership with the city and with the County Board of Supervisors means that we are confident that we will be able to begin to get our educators vaccinated as early as 2 to 3 weeks from now. So the county Supervisor Fletcher last week announced that he thinks that there will be adequate supply of vaccinations in the county to get our educators to begin to come in within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Todd, we've met actually just this morning with your folks from the fire department who are actually opening up space that they are administering at Balboa Park to make it possible when the vaccines are there for our educators to begin to come in. We're talking about potentially opening up a second site, maybe at Morse High School somewhere in the southern part of our district in cooperation with the fire department. So it's looking very, very good that really in the next few weeks, we will begin to get our educators vaccinated. And then as our educators are able to go through and get their second doses, it all points to, I believe, a real possibility that we will begin to get to phase 2 this spring. And again, as we go into phase 2, we know that it's very important that we open in phases. That's something that our UCSD team has consistently recommended. It's very important, even with all the mitigations that we have in place, that we're able to actually implement these strategies, making sure we keep the social distancing, making sure that our ventilated classrooms are working properly, making sure that everybody's wearing their masks, wearing their PPE. We've got the plans in place to make that happen, but we have to be able to execute those plans. And in order to do that, we have to phase in so that principals and staff on campuses are able to do this the right way. So all of that points to, in addition to a lot of expansion of phase 1 over the next few weeks, points to phase 2 being able to begin in the spring.
Do you have a...
So I know we're so short for time, but this is the question everyone is asking. Does phase 2, so I know there's a phase 2 plan in the original plan that you guys have on the website. Does phase 2 require that all teachers be vaccinated with both doses? Because that could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks out, and that's really a long time from now.
Yeah, we actually believe that that educators should have access to the vaccines. We have teachers who are able to volunteer to come in, but when we get to the point of fully staffing up for phase 2 and requiring educators to come in, we believe it's appropriate that educators be vaccinated. And because we're able to do that in San Diego, we think we should. And so that's something that is very important to us that we're gonna pursue.
And to just follow up, I know there is a California Department of Public Health safety review that's now on the table for districts. Is that something that the district will consider?
Well, if you're talking about the waiver process, that is actually not something we are eligible for. And we've talked to folks at the state about that. To apply for that waiver, the district would have had to be moving towards phase 2 a month ago.
Okay.
Right? And so, but again, importantly, we intend to keep moving forward in a way that's following health and safety guidelines. And we think we're getting there, and we think that, we're going to be able to get there soon. So, we're more interested in keeping moving forward with our plan to have the right mitigation strategies on our campuses, get our educators vaccinated in cooperation with the city and with the county, and to continue, for all of us to continue to do our part to keep these case rates coming down, because that's what's giving us, cause for optimism, because all of us as a community are wearing our masks, following the guidelines, staying away from large gatherings. All of those individual efforts that each of us make are why we're seeing those case rates starting to come down.
All right. We're already a third of our way through our time, and I know there are a lot of parents chiming in, mainly about the vaccine. And I do also want to say we're going to save the chat, and we'll also forward along all of these questions to people who are chiming in to the district, to Superintendent Jackson and President Brewer, so they can see everything. We're not going to be able to cover it. But one question that's repeatedly come up is, since if the CDC or the state is not requiring that teachers be vaccinated, why did the district decide to make this its stance?
Because we think it's the right thing to do. Because we think the right way to do this is to bring our educators along with us. And look, if you are an educator in our district and you're looking out and you're seeing that the vaccines are there and available on the horizon, we think it's a much better approach to work together to get our educators those vaccines than to try to force people into a situation that they don't believe is safe. And we just don't believe in that kind of approach in our district. We think it has negative consequences, when administration from a district and teachers get into a position that teachers don't believe that the administration is looking out for their own safety and their own best interests. And when that happens, it will send a message, and we're seeing this in other places around the country, that when you get into a big fight where, the district is trying to force people into a situation that they don't believe is safe and that they don't believe is right, the message starts to get out there that it's not safe.
But you'll have, you mentioned that you...
And just, Marcel, just to complete this point, and if parents are hearing this message from their teachers that it's not safe, then what you see is in places like Chicago, places like New York, where there's been a big battle, parents don't come back even when you reopen. You have small percentages of parents who come back when it's reopened, when you reopen. So I understand, that, some people would want to, kind of push forward and say it's not necessary for educators to be vaccinated before they come back. Our position is, but it's right for educators to be vaccinated before we have people come back. And so let's work together to make that happen as quickly as possible. And that's what's happening now.
I guess what I was going to clarify, though, you did mention that you're allowing teachers to volunteer to come back. So if they feel comfortable coming back, then they can choose to do
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, and we have about 3,000 staff that are currently on our campuses every day. Yeah.
All right, so let's turn it now to Jeff Bennett. And Dr. Jackson, I know you haven't said much, but you feel free to chime in. He's the SDUSD District Advisory Council on Compensatory Education. Jeff Bennett is. Jeff, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Marcella. Richard Lamont, I get the fun of asking the money and stewardship question. And so understanding the district has taken steps to address some of the increased financial burdens that schools are suffering due to the COVID epidemic, including the recently approved Title I and Title I supplemental plans, which held school sites harmless year over year and even increased funding at several school sites, and the allocation of the $130 million in stimulus towards PPP, additional staffing, and IT infrastructure that support online learning. The parents want to know what the district, when the district receives the funding from the two recent federal stimulus packages, how are you prioritizing those funds? And what key interventions do you believe will have the greatest equitable impact district-wide?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I really want to ask Lamont to get into this, because as a board, what we want to do is make sure that those resources are spent in a way that provides the kind of support that our students desperately need. And that's whether students continue to be in distance learning or even as we begin to reopen. We have students that have experienced severe trauma, during this entire period. And of course, we have students that are suffering academic loss. So those resources are there to try to support our students, get them through, this situation that they've been in for, almost a year and will continue, to be in, going forward, and provide that support so that, students can get back on track. So that's broadly what we want those resources to focus on. And, please ask Lamont to, talk specifically about what we're looking at.
Thank you, Richard. And first, I want to begin by saying thank you to MITS for putting this together. I know this happened before I came on board. And again, I'm Area 2 superintendent until anything happens with our superintendent. So I want to make sure that's clear. And thank you, Mayor Gloria, for those kind words. Jeff, great question. First and foremost, we have to use dollars to make sure that students have access. As you know, it is critical right now for the online learning that students have access to attend to their learning. The second bit of work that we're going to have to pay attention to is the social emotional learning. And currently, that's one of the criteria for our expanded phase 1. Students who need some support socially, emotionally, will be able to come on our campuses meeting the criteria to get some additional support. And then when we think about learning loss, we have to think about how do we use those funds to ensure students have access to programs outside the core program. Those are ways in which we're going to be funding. It's going to be different at each site, contextualized for the students that they serve. And we're going to have to take an inventory when students get back on a campus, or when we're connecting with parents and families. That's what I would encourage families to make sure they're doing, is stay connected with the educators, stay connected with the administrators, stay connected with the counseling team at each individual site to make sure we're in partnership, so that when we are at the table making decisions and doing our site-based budgeting plans, these are places where these topics can come up, and then principals can work with their sites to make sure they're allocating dollars in the appropriate places to support our students.
Marcella, may I ask a quick follow-up on that?
Yes, we're about halfway through. Go ahead.
Yes, Lamont, is there a commitment from the district then, based on what your response was, to engage the communities that you're serving when those funds come in on the best use of those funds?
Absolutely. I think, as a site principal, it was critical to engage with our governance team, our SSC teams, our PTA, any stakeholder group that we have. And we as a district have a commitment to engage with our DAC, our DLAC, CACs. That's critical. Partnership is critical. These are adaptive issues. It's going to take more than one person making a decision about dollars. We're going to have to come together and really look at data and let the data drive our decisions, not individual desires or programs that have been around. We are in a different place. As Richard said, as long as he's been on the board, I've never seen this in my lifetime. We are going to have to respond differently. And we have to recognize that as many students will come back onto our campuses when it's safe, as Richard described, we're still going to have a number of students who are going to choose to remain online. And that does not take away the expectation that we have to serve the children who make that decision for whatever reason. These are our children, and as Mayor Gloria said, you know, to be a great city, we have to have great schools, whether that's on site or for folks who have to, you know, make a decision to remain online. So yes, that's a long answer to say yes, Jeff. I heard you in your last presentation at the board. I thought it was great. We have to be in partnership, close proximity to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our students, not the adults.
I encourage all of you to read through the chat when you have a chance. A lot of people chiming in. I'm moving now to Scott Sodi. He's the chair of the SDUSD Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. Scott has 2 children in the San Diego Unified School District, one in 2nd grade and one in kindergarten. His kindergartner is blind, visually impaired, and I know virtual learning is extremely even more challenging for students with disabilities. So go ahead and Scott, ask your question.
Yes, thank you. You both mentioned the expansion of learning labs in phase 1. I just wanted to clarify a couple things to make sure that that was available to all students with IEPs. Previously, it was only available to students who had teachers at their school that were willing to volunteer. And also, is that just appointment based, or is it full-time 5 days a week? And then the larger question is, once the kids are back in school, how are you going to address the substantial learning loss that has occurred over the past year?
Lamont, do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. Scott, thank you for that question. The answer, simple answer is yes. It doesn't have to be appointment based. It is, you know, the criteria is set for students who have IEPs, and yes, it's a full day. There are some schools that are going 4 days, but they're working with their communities on why that is and how they're utilizing that 5th day. But our expectation is that students will be able to be on our campuses in learning labs, full day, 5 days a week. The second piece is you know, it's hard to really say, Scott, broadly, what are we going to do about learning loss? I think each school is going to have to determine where that learning loss is through formative assessments, through conversations with the educators, and then they're going to have to make plans, you know, on their campus. It may be extending the day. It may be extending learning through the summer. So it depends, I would say, but those are some ideas. We certainly have a commitment to making sure that we can address any learning loss that happens for our students. I don't know if Richard wanted to jump in. And
No, that's absolutely right.
Thank you. Let's turn now to Lalia Alali. She's chair of the SDUSD English Language Advisory Committee and the recent recipient, we want to congratulate you, of the San Diego County Office of Education Equity Champion. That was in 2020. So Lalia has both a middle school student and high school student who attend SDUSD. Go ahead, Lalia, and ask your question.
Thank you, Marcella, and thank you all. So as a DLAC chair, I'm aware that the district planned to address the English learners' learning loss and fostering the social emotional growth as a key element to closing achievement gaps and accelerating students' learning. However, the latest data from the district confirmed that the students are failing their classes. So my question is, how is the district envisioning learning recovery in this difficult time with the focus on instructional support, social emotional aspect, and parent engagement? Thank you.
thank you, Lalia, and congratulations. First, I would say, you know, when we think about our criteria for our students who are most vulnerable, language learners is right up there with students who have IEPs. And students who are showing that they're not achieving at the rates do have access to our learning labs. But also I want to thank the educators, including, you know, my own wife, who's a teacher in our district, who's battling her own health challenges, battling cancer. You know, she's going to school. She's in the classroom because she's committed, as we all are, to supporting the students in our classroom labs. And so while this is very difficult for me as a husband to have someone who's battling her own health issues, the reality is it's an opportunity for her to live her life to the fullest, and she is happiest is when she's with her students. So Lalia, that's what I would say is thank you to the educators who are coming on our campuses, in our classroom labs. Thank you to our visiting teachers, our classified staff who are staffing up our learning labs, because what we know is some students are in difficult situations at home and they're better situated in our schools. And as Richard said, we have 22,000 students who will have access, and they're being contacted, and educators are showing up in different amounts because they see the importance of serving our students. And so I look at examples like that when I go to Mason, when I go to Gage, when I'm on campuses like Hickman in Mira Mesa, where I see the numbers of students coming on campus and the number of adults, we need more. Lalia, you're 100% right. Many students are going to benefit from being on our campuses, and I think we're going to see the achievement rates change. I think we're going to see grades that are reflective because there are going to be 1 to 2 adults right there to support them when there are challenges, when they need explanation, when they need tutoring. We're wrapping around our services. The other thing is it's hard to really see the social emotional impact on children when they're at home. But now when students are coming on campus, we can connect with them. We talk about the need for a caring adult. When students show up and we can talk to the children and we can find out, we're better able to serve them, Lalia. And that's what our hope is that our students come on our campuses and we can really support them socially, emotionally, and more, equally academically.
I also want to say when I'm addressing the panelists and asking them to ask their questions, these are whittled down from hundreds of questions that we received when people registered, and these are just parent representatives so that we can have a dialogue. And I'm most of the people in this chat being very, very respectful, coming up with some great ideas and solutions. And the mayor's office has actually provided an email if you'd like to reach out directly. So that's just great. I'm glad that we can at least start this dialogue. Let's turn it now to Dolores Garcia. She's a parent and community member and founder of Gompers Preparatory Academy with an 11th grader at San Diego High School. Dolores, from all the questions we received, what is important? What speaks to you to ask?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, everyone here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mitz, for inviting me and having me here. And thank you to our superintendent and Mr. Barrera. Thank you so much. One of the questions that I have and that I have seen over and over, who is making the final decisions when we're reopening the schools? Is it San Diego Unified or SDEA? Those are just the questions that I'd like to know. I received an email from our superintendent, Cindy Martin, with the Keisha Bowden and her, so I'm confused of who makes the final decisions when it comes to reopening our schools.
Thanks, Dolores. Richard, you want to jump in? I can jump in.
Yeah, I'll just,
Okay.
So the board, the elected board, Dolores, will make the decisions, and we do that in cooperation with our educators. And so we actually very much value the relationship that we pre-pandemic had built with SDA, with AESD, with the classified workers. And we believe that through this pandemic, we've continued to work hard to take the next step in cooperation and in partnership, with our educators. And so we're always going to work in that way. Sometimes, there can be decisions that are difficult to figure out, between district leadership and between our educators, but we don't just give up and we don't just point fingers at each other. We keep working hard, and we think that approach has benefited us, and we will continue with that approach. I'm sorry, Lamont, if you want to.
No, well, yes. I will say, I would repeat what Richard was saying in terms of the board. It is critical for us to be in partnership, and I think Jeff mentioned this, whether it be with our educators, our parents, we have to do this collectively and be mindful as we're moving forward. So certainly the board will make that final decision and guide us the way we need to go, but certainly we'll be in partnership. And Marcella, I do want to say thank you, as you did recognize all the folks in the chat. Thank you. I know we can't get to them all, but we'll certainly take those back, and just want to publicly thank everyone for participating.
I'm a mother of 2 school-aged kids, and I know it's very emotional to be a parent right now. You know, we're all dealing with our own struggles with family, work, life balance, and the kids are suffering. But I do feel like we're right on that threshold, and so I appreciate all of you for coming together, because it's encouraging that the case rates are going down, and the vaccines are, becoming more available. So someone did ask if the mayor had any pull in prioritizing teachers. So, these are all questions that will be addressed. Let's move now to Tom Kaliinoy. He's president of Parents for Quality Education. He has grandkids, and one of them is in the San Diego Unified School District. He raised his own kids, went through some of the schools in SDUSD. So Tom, you reviewed the hundreds of questions that came in. What speaks to you to ask Richard and Lamont?
Well, I mean, kind of dovetailing a little bit about, what's going on right now. It's immense change. And immense change with respect to equitable and quality public education. The question is directed at Mr. Jackson, and then follow on with Mr. Barrera. And I apologize that I used that term, but I just don't know what else to call you. So I think it's just trying to show respect here. But Richard, you said, yeah, I just did it. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We established at the beginning. We established at the beginning that Dr. Jackson and President Barrera
and by the way,
were
Tom,
okay with
Tom,
Richard.
I found out this morning that we've got a mutual friend in John Hughes. So please, please use Richard.
Go way back. Yes. Yeah. Listen, you talked about how you mentioned how parents and students won't come back unless there's a detailed plan about, dealing with, immunization and getting them ready. But the detail already shows that a lot of parents are not coming back because they've had to step in and kind of fill the gap and the void for education. I mean, we're looking at numbers somewhere along maybe 30% of the enrollment population. And I'll say that, watching the data and statistics for the last few years, I've seen that enrollment has been steadily but slowly declining, and now it's kind of dropped off a cliff as a result of COVID. My concern, though, is that the pre-existing conditions of, having a blueprint for academic achievement, particularly in communities that are disenfranchised, like District E and some in District D, south of the 8 as they call it, with enrollment decreasing for the past few years, and now COVID dramatically forcing parents to fend for themselves and find opportunities and solutions. And I will add that I know that the board partnered with the LA Unified Board and went up to Sacramento and kind of froze spending or funding from previous years, because you knew that the enrollment numbers were going to drop precipitously. And while that was great, there was also a moratorium on any additional funding going to alternative public schools like public charter schools. So my question starts with Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lamont Jackson.
Lamont's fine, Tom.
Yeah, all right. You stated that it's a group effort and it's a collective effort, and you're absolutely right. But, the position of superintendent requires a leader with vision and the ability to kind of bring these groups together, and more importantly, listen to the groups that have already had a direct impact on academic improvements. And I speak of two things, particularly in District E. There was a academic achievement blueprint for Black students in District E prior to Cindy Martin becoming superintendent, and it was working. And then there's another model that's working in District E with GPA's success. So what I want to know is, will you be supportive of charters and schools of choice, or will we continue to see a limitation on that because it's viewed as a threat to the district policies and education system? kind of
Thanks,
a
Tom.
long-winded question, but
That was a few questions in there, so I'm going to try to tie a couple. If I miss, then I'm sure you'll circle back. First,
sure.
I'm going to say thank you to some of our our parents who have newer school-age kids. We have seen recent gains, growth in our enrollment with our kinders, our TK and kinders, where we saw some decline. We're starting to see that go up. Now, that does not take away, Tom, your point that we have lost some enrollment, and recognize that. I guess I would plead to the community, we're right there. There is light. No one thought this would be a year. None of us. And here we are facing, close to a year, and we're right there. This is the time to come together and not splinter even further. So that's where I'm going to start. And I think folks are making some decisions at the early grades where we saw smaller enrollment early on, and now we're starting to see some gains. So pleased with that. The second piece you mentioned, the blueprint, and I think what you can look at across Cindy's tenure with the board's direction is a real focus on our students with disabilities, our language learners, and now we are really paying close attention to our Latinx students and our Black youth. We recognize the gaps. We're not going to shy away from the results. We're going to shine a flashlight, and we're going to put resources in place to make sure we do that. So I would be hard pressed to say, I would look at the blueprint and look at the strategy we've implemented, perhaps not from an adult perspective, from a student perspective, and take a look at that. But our board has been unapologetic about it. If you look at our restorative justice work, if you look at our anti-racist focus, and I said this, I think it was the first press conference I did, even just coming out and saying we're going to be unapologetic about that in addressing the needs of our students with disabilities and our language learners. Lalia brings that up, Scott brings it up, and I'm going to bring it up for our Black youth. I grew up in this district, and the reason that I'm where I am is because of the teachers that I had. I grew up in Southeast San Diego. So I experienced a great deal. And thanks to the educators throughout my career who are still with me, who still support me. That's why I am where I am, that period. I mean, my parents were great. They did the best they could. My dad, single dad. My grandmother raised me. I mean, they did the best they could. And thank goodness for the teachers like Ira Henderson, Jim Fletcher, Russ Cravens, who recently passed away, Betty Olson. I can just name the educators. And I'm sure I'm missing a ton. Some people say, name that educator. I could name a ton. But the woman I call mom, Ira Henderson, Black woman who worked at Lincoln and Claremont, she was an angel. She is an angel, and helped raise me up and guided me. So in terms of our focus on Black youth, that is never a question. I was an advocate before I was an educator, right? Certificated staff for Black youth, for our African-American young men and women. So that's critical. And then your last point was, do we turn our backs on charter school? Every family has to make a choice for them. It's not for me or anyone else to tell a family the decision that they make, whether they go charter or private. We hope that they stay public, but we are going to hold the same standards for all of our schools. Our charter schools, we're going to hold those expectations. Our public schools, we're going to hold those expectations, because the reality is, and I'm going to go back to what Mayor Gloria said, this city is dependent on education, no matter how you get it, where you get it. We just hope they come to us. And we hope that when they make the choice to come to us, that we take care of them like they're our own children, because that's the model that worked for me.
I appreciate that. I just want to point out that there has been a lack of support from the district for charter schools. It's been limited, and it's, you know, pretty much frozen. And I think that with the success of select charter schools like Gompers Prep as an example, that is a shining light in that community in District E, that we should be doing more to be supportive of schools like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly think that Cindy and the board has done a great job supporting the charter schools. You may disagree. That's my stance, and certainly, you know, respect your stance as well. Again, my hope is that I will, you know, continue to work with the board to support all of our schools in our district.
Dr. Jackson, do you have a number, an updated number of how many students have left since that fateful day, March 13th of 2020? And
I don't.
Okay.
I don't, Marcella. And again, I don't know that.
I mean, your message is to hang in there, right? Because I mean, you're seeing in the next few weeks, and I know a lot of parents, with seniors in particular, are hoping that they'll be given priority as far as, you know, welcoming kids back to the classroom because this is their last shot.
Certainly, I'm not. You know, it's interesting as a parent. I have a junior and a senior, and it's tough. You know, senior year is certainly one of those years, and you know, I have great hopes for him. But you know, as a parent, it is tough. As an educator, it is tough. And so I'm saying to you all the same thing I say to myself: hang in there. You know, our kids are resilient, and my senior, he has taught me a great deal about parenting and just how to support him. And so we're going to continue to do that. And so,
Great.
Yeah.
I think a lot of good dialogue here. It's 7:50, so we actually are doing pretty well. I think Lily was going to, again, just for people, if you just joined in, you know, these are the panelists asking the question, but their voice represents all of you in the community. There were a couple hundred questions, and we categorized them in this 1 hour session to try and at least begin this dialogue as we're right on that threshold of more kids returning to school. So you may see the faces on here as the people asking the questions, but they represent San Diego Unified School District parents, everyone who has been asking. So Lily, why don't you go ahead and ask our final question, and then we can kind of wrap up here, keep everyone's, be respectful.
Great, thank you so much. Actually, Dr. Jackson and Mr. Barrera, you both talked about cooperation, it's a group effort, and we really believe in that. But unfortunately, who's kept out of the cooperation and group effort are the parents, which means the families and the kids. So we've been left out of this conversation. So I know that a lot of the school districts around us are open, and most of the responses to that is to say, oh, they're much smaller than us. Yes, San Diego Unified is a huge district. But, you know, when I first moved here 10 years ago, I thought the cluster design was brilliant, right? So that really talks to having a quality school or a school system in every neighborhood. And I really do believe that. And I really, you know, I live in La Jolla and my kids go to school in PB. Even though I'm only half a mile, it makes a difference. My kids ask me every day to move down to PB where their friends are, right? So I do believe that. And I think the cluster system is so great. Why don't we utilize that a little bit more? You know, because the district is so big, you can't have a one-size-fits-all, and getting these cluster groups, committees together to figure out a solution for their own community, because we each have our own unique characteristics. That would be really nice. And then having the district hold us accountable for our plans would be great. And so I guess from that, we've also had parents tell us that they've had great experiences through this period. Though it's difficult, they've had good experiences. So why can't all the students have good experiences? And that's where this recommendation comes from, because each of our communities are so different. You really need to not only, you know, manage from the top down, but listen to us from the bottom up. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, Lily, I think what you have just laid out is incredibly important, and I certainly agree with it, and I think I think our board, I know Cindy, I know Lamont, we absolutely agree with the point that we have to listen to our communities, and we have to recognize that our communities can be in very different places, and on this issue, that's especially true. We know that in parts of our district where the spread of the virus is incredibly high, the conversations that we have with parents can be very different from the conversations that we have in parts of the district where, the virus is still very real and very dangerous, but not quite the same experience. So, I don't know if people saw, we had an op-ed in the UT a few days ago by one of our teachers at Marshall Elementary School in City Heights. And what she described, so this is a teacher that comes into school every day and works to talk to parents and invite students into her classroom because she is concerned and she knows that there are students that she wants to bring into her classroom. But she, relayed a conversation that she had with a parent who said, you know what, half of the people in my apartment complex have COVID, and I'm not feeling comfortable sending my kids to school right now. And so when we think about the different situations and the different needs of our kids, it's, what Lamont said earlier is really critical, because we know that even at the point that we can get to opening up more of our schools and offering the option for more parents to come in, we will continue to have a large number of parents. It could be, Lily, the majority of parents in our district who say, we're not ready. It's still not safe. And so is our distance learning program going to be able to continue and have stability and, have the ability to keep improving even as we open up? One of the things that we've been very concerned about this whole time is opening up and then closing, and then opening up and closing. Because in addition to just the instability that creates for everybody, that, we've moved an entire system into distance learning that most people, most educators, parents, and students had never had before, had never experienced. And so if we're going to continually interrupt that system, then that's not going to be to the benefit of students who will continue to rely on distance learning, even as we're able to open up. So we have a lot of challenges in front of us, and the challenges are, in some cases, particular, to communities. And so, we all know that we want to get our schools back open, and we, are hopeful that we're on the right path to doing that. But our challenges won't end, at that point. And, we're going to continue to have students in distance learning. We're going to continue to have, so many of our students, whether they're in distance learning or back at school, who need the kind of support that Lamont talked about. So understanding how diverse this district is, it's something that I, think about all the time. And again, we really appreciate this conversation tonight, but we know for everybody who's here and participating in this conversation tonight, there are thousands of people who are not in this conversation tonight and might have very different perspectives and very unique perspectives. And we need to keep listening to everybody. So I agree with your point, Lily.
And I just want to follow up. I'm monitoring the chat too, and I think the people that want to go back to school aren't saying that everyone should go back to school. So to your point, I think this distance learning thing is going to go on, but I think we just want the choice. And honestly, my kids are fine. They kind of want to stay home, but the little ones really need a lot of help, the elementary school kids. And I'm more concerned about them than my own kids, honestly, because I don't think you can do kindergarten or first grade very effectively, online, and they're just miserable. My kids can figure it out. They've actually, done online learning before. So we need to think about the whole, and we're talking about choice, not a mandate. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we're coming up on 8 o'clock here, and I think, thank you so much, Richard and Lamont, for answering a lot of these questions. A lot of people in the chat, of course, have very differing opinions. I'm sure you've heard a lot of the feedback, but I did go to your website and I saw the dashboard, which was very transparent, and it said like about 2,200 students are currently learning on campus with 6 active COVID cases, and so it's about 0.3%. 4,000 staff working on campus, 5 active COVID cases with 0.1%. So at least the people who are coming back, it seems like the COVID situation's under control as much as it can be. And if you phase in more students, more staff, I know the goal is to keep them safe while at school. But I appreciate just in the first few minutes of this conversation, you agreeing to at least putting this on the agenda and giving kind of an overall progress report. And so that's something concrete that came out of tonight.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate that. Mitz, would you like to say anything in
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. I think this is the beginning of a conversation, and we hope that it will continue. And we will, as promised, we will provide you those questions. We group them and send it to you. So maybe in some way you can address those concerns in some of your communicating with parents. So if that is okay, to send it to you.
Oh,
and
of
we
course.
will
Yes.
post it on our website, and we will go through the chat, because I see that there's a lot of information in the chat. So someone is also looking and reviewing those. Okay, so you can hear the voices of parents and community, and I think that is very important. So again, thank you all, and thank you, Marcella.
Yes, thank you. And
For
the
doing
Alliance
great-
for Quality Education, we're also going to post the questions to parentsconnectforkids.org so that everyone can see what everyone else is asking. But also the Alliance for Quality Education, which Mitz founded 25 years ago and continues to be a champion for, also wants to do the same type of dialogue with teachers and with principals, because it's important for everyone to weigh in. But a lot of people, Lily, from the feedback, liking your idea, and I know the district has area superintendents because Dr. Jackson is one, but of the possibility maybe of subsectioning the district and the areas, because every area, since it's such a large district, has its own unique concerns. So that may be something that could help speed up the bringing the kids back safely. So anything else I would like to say?
Thank you, Marcella.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Lamont.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. And be safe.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.